All right, hello everyone. This is Group 1 for Humanities 1020 Honors, and today we'll be covering the relationship between migration and tango and how this dance reflects the emotional experience of communities who shaped it. So, a little bit of background. Tango was born in Buenos Aires, Argentina, at a time of mass immigration in the late 19th and early 20th century. Because of this, millions of immigrants were arriving from Europe, while Afro-Argentine and Criollo communities were already in Argentina. So this obviously created a mixture. These different groups lived together in the same port neighborhoods, sharing the same music. They share the same language, traditions, and emotions. From this cultural mixture, tango emerged as a way for people to express longing, nostalgia, displacement, and then desire for connection. So Gustavo Varela in his essay explains that tango is deeply tied to the emotional experience of migration. This carries the feeling of being between worlds, which means feeling life you're left out or you're feeling far from home, while at the same time trying to build a new identity somewhere else. This was obviously very hard for those migrant people. This is why tango often feels intimate, it can feel tense, and obviously expressive. It's a dance of both separation and closeness. To briefly explain the law of 1420, it was established as a free and mandatory public education in 1884, which helped bring children from many cultural backgrounds into shared spaces. This contributed to forming common national identity. Later, though, as tango grew in popularity, the government also became involved in how tango was represented and promoted, especially as it started to symbolize Argentina internationally. Tango expresses the cultural experience of migration and identity formation in Argentina, which becomes or became a cultural language that brought different communities together. Now I'll pass it to Juancho, who will discuss the evolution of tango and how the dance continued to change over time.
When asking ourselves what is tango, we find that it is both not just the dance, but also the musical genre itself. It took shape in the districts of Buenos Aires and Montevideo at the end of the 19th century, and it was greatly originated from the margins of Argentinian society at the time. That would be Afro-Argentines, rural migrants, and newly arrived Europeans. In Tango and Political Economy of Passion by Marta Sanvigliano, which is an outside source, she suggested that these margins were met at contact points. The cultures, Afro-Italian or Spaniard, brought with them instrument melodies and customs that were later implemented and reflected into tango. African candombe, milonga, and habanero rhythms were implemented, and early composers of tango like Samuel Castriola reflected homesickness and isolation, feelings very present within the migrants of this era, such as the example of songs like Mi Noche Triste. In the end, Savignona argued that tango could have not been made possible had it not been for this melting pot in Argentina. Tango was practiced in the outskirts, cafes, and brothels of these minorities. As seen in Tango en Política by Gustavo Valera, it was actually heavily looked down upon by the elites because it was considered vulgar by how physical it was. But part of the reason why it stuck out and why it spread so quickly was because there was a need for communication amongst this dense population. So by the 1870s and the 1880s, its presence had risen due to the influx of immigrants. It had become somewhat of a means of synthesization.
Because we're talking about tango, we need to mention how the government was involved and how they wanted to create laws to prohibit it. Nonetheless, immigrants refused to abandon it, keeping the art alive, and eventually it became a national symbol of Argentina. Using tango y ley, Historia de Censura y Rescate, we will look into the period of censorship. So, Isa, can you tell me a little bit about the first stage of this censorship?
Has to do with the forbidden dance and the forgotten genre from 1880 to 1930. With tango overall, although there was no specific official policy against the music genre itself, the dance did suffer restrictions. Despite the fact that they were minimum, they kept increasing over time.
And then during the 1884, during the first presidency of Julio Argentino Roca, it was pushed forward the law 1420, which established compulsory free and secular education for everyone. So even though this law wanted to standardize civilized national culture, tango emerged from marginalized immigrant and Afro-Argentine communities, and it was often stigmatized by elites as vulgar or immoral.
This was what started the domino effect of the government slowly integrating itself into the poorer areas where tango was popularized in order to further control and regulate it. Schools sought to erase these foreign dialects and promote pure Spanish, while tango embraced lunfardo, a hybrid immigrant slang. The controversy surrounding tango crossed borders, and at the beginning of the 20th century, with its international spread, the dance scandalized European courts. They said it was low sensuality of blacks and mestizos, and considered it a dance where decency was shipwrecked. These reactions coming from Europe reflected and reinforced the conservative values that also existed in Argentina regarding this dance. Angie, what can you tell us about the second stage of this?
So the second stage was the institutionalization of censorship. So it was the true persecution and control over tango content intensified after the 1930s, the coup d'etat. This stage was marked by an effort to control the emerging cultural industry and particularly the lyrics of popular songs. So as we mentioned before, lunfardo is the popular slang that had developed in marginal areas of Buenos Aires, and it was influenced by the immigrant languages such as Italian, Gallo, French, and it was initially seen by the police officials as a criminal language. And Lunfardo became a point of attack for language purists and nationalists who consider it a bastardization of the Spanish language and a sign of cultural babyalization, they fear. And for our final stage,
The late recognition, taking place from 1983 to the present day. By the mid 1970s, tango being in decline, affected by censorship and the emergence of new genres, the struggle for its recognition continued. In 1977, the National Tango Day, December 11th, was established, and the true revival of it came with the return of democracy in 1983 and a growing international demand.
from then on, the state played an active role in the recognition and promotion of the genre. So laws and decrees were created to protect and encourage tango. So for example, the National Academy of Tango was created in Argentina. So all the mixture of the government and the movement of tango were two that were diametrically juxtaposed. So with all this information, Maya, Liz, can you tell us a little bit about our experience that day?
None of us had ever experienced tango as the way we did on October 18th. This experience left us speechless. We were able to learn the basic steps and at the same time observe and admire the incredible Alex and Martina, whose passion and elegance deeply inspired us. I felt that I was entering a world where silence and the eye contact and movements spoke volumes more than any conversation. I discovered that tango is not just a dance, but a wordless dialogue, a mutual surrender where trust is fundamental. There was something profoundly human and magical about that. As a woman, I had to learn how to control myself and just trust my partner, allowing him to guide me while I responded with sensitive and presence.
Tango migration isn't just about people moving. It's about how culture itself travels and transforms. When Argentine tango spread around Buenos Aires in the early 1900s, it became a bridge between cultures. Each country that adopted it gave it a unique flavor, keeping its emotional depth, but also the spirit of connection. For instance, in Europe, tango arrived through immigrant communities and became famous in Paris, where it was polished and performed in elegant salons. There, it lost some of the working class roots, but gained artistic recognition. According to researchers Chris Gortensen and Maria Susana Azzi in the article Globalization and the Tango, published in the Yearbook for Traditional Music, tango's meaning and style shift across countries, reflecting that each society's values and emotions. Their study shows how tango became a global language of migration and identity, a society that not only carries stories of adaptation, but it also belongs wherever it goes. These cultural connections are important because they prove that art, like us people, can cross borders and evolve. Tango's journey teaches us that culture isn't fixed yet. It grows through contact, exchange, and shared experience.
In the world of tango, we had the opportunity to meet wonderful people, each with a different story, a unique background, and a reason for being there. I especially remember a Jamaican man who said he didn't know much about tango, but he started dancing out of curiosity to learn different styles. He tried bachata and other rhythms, but he confessed that none of them had been as profound and meaningful as tango. Although he's been dancing for a year, he still considers himself as a beginner, eager to learn. Among those present, there were also many Argentinians, like Mariano and Anabela, from whom tango is part of their identity and tradition. However, the most beautiful thing was seeing how people from different cultures and walks of life came together through the art of tango, creating a space from connection, respect, and humanity. Because in the end, tango is more than a dance, it's a humanistic movement that reminds us no matter where we come from, we all share the same language for the soul.
In conclusion, our story, the story of tango migration, reminds us that tango is much more than a dance. It began as an expression of mixed identities in Buenos Aires, transformed under national influences like Law 1420, and eventually connected people all around the world. Whether dancing in Argentina, Paris, or Tokyo, or wherever you are, tango continues to unite different cultures through its music, emotion, and movement by showing us that creativity and identity can migrate together.